My name is Camden, and this is my video out. It feels weird now that I pointed it out. Hi everybody, my name is Camden Ador. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a 27-year-old trans man. I was born in Massachusetts, and I lived there until I was 13 years old. At that time, my family and I moved to Tennessee, and I lived there until I graduated high school and left after that. So, yeah, I mean, living in Massachusetts is more so what I enjoyed about childhood. I think part of that was because I moved at 13 to somewhere in the deep south. It was just such a huge culture shock for me. Whereas my younger siblings adjusted a little bit better, so it always felt kind of weird for me there. I had been questioning for years. Am I queer? Am I gender fluid? I wanted to be open, you know, I didn't want to feel like I was pigeonholing myself without actually really knowing what was going on. But I started wearing a binder for a while, I was still wearing bras, I was wearing binders, and then I started wearing binders more, and then some time had passed, and like they were all dirty or something like that, and I had to wear a bra, and like I was like, whoa, it hit me that I no longer like wanted to display my breasts at all, and I didn't feel comfortable being in public in a bra anymore. And that was like enough for me to know finally that I could say, okay, yeah, I am trans. I discovered, and I think this happened with a lot of like trans guys in my generation, we discovered like other people on YouTube and stuff like that. So it was kind of like in the quiet of my own room for a long time. I was watching videos like that and like wondering if that was me. I came out as bisexual / lesbian like at 13. It was kind of like a transitioning phase, still figuring it out kind of thing. So I don't exactly remember, but I'd like to say it was probably my first girlfriend, and I think I was her first girlfriend as well. And I really don't know how it happened. We were both in theater. I don't know if you know much about theater, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So I think we just kind of were flirting with each other, didn't really know if that's what it was, and one thing led to the next, and it kind of evolved from there. At this point I was living in Tennessee, and this town that I lived in had a Piggly Wiggly, a gas station, and a high school, just to paint a picture for you of that, you know, small town southern vibe. But it was weird. It was almost like I either didn't care or I was a little bit ignorant to how much that was a problem for people down there. But at the same time, when I did come out and me and my girlfriend were a lot more open, I got like so many notes from like other girls mainly telling me that they were bisexual and like either thanking me for coming out or telling me they had a crush on me. But at the same time, I was like the only out bi person, so they were probably like, you. It's funny thinking back on it now, but I'm actually really happy about that. They weren't okay with it. They're very religious. And it was funny because when you said that you assumed because we lived in Massachusetts they'd be more liberal, I assumed that about them and Massachusetts until I went back at like the age of 20, and I realized like actually it is technically a blue state, but I don't know, like there's a vibe there, you know. And even when I lived there, I went to a Christian school. My mom was a secretary at that school. My dad wasn't a pastor at the time, but was very religious, and part of the reason why we moved to Tennessee is that he wanted to pursue music, Christian music, and Nashville is kind of like the area to be. And he eventually found a position at a church being a worship leader and the youth pastor there. So, in terms of my family, I don't think the location really did anything, but I actually didn't come out until I lived in Tennessee. I had no idea that I was a lesbian or anything like that before then. I mean, I think we're beginning to understand that this idea of gender identity and sexual preference is not a point A to point B thing. And like my story of being bisexual to lesbian to trans to bisexual to queer, I mean, that's literally how it evolved from the age of 13 to now. I'll be 28 on the 17th of this month. So I think understanding that is really important for cis straight people, but also for our community, because there is maybe like this pressure to feel like, or maybe, you know, when you are having thoughts that you might be bisexual as opposed to this, you're like, wait, but I already told everybody I was bisexual or straight or whatever, so now how am I going to go back on that or something? And I feel like that's kind of like this internal turmoil that a lot of people have. And that was like me too. I was questioning if I was being too closed-minded because I thought I was trans. It was weird, you know? But it was just because my whole life, I guess, or like for most of it, I was a lesbian, a woman, and I liked women, you know? So I think that this whole constant evolution thing is really important to hold on to. I basically say I'm queer. I love the term queer. I feel like it's all-encompassing, and I feel like it is annoying to have to, like, always, like, explain to people everything, blah, 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 all that stuff. And a lot of people don't differentiate between sexuality, sexual preference, and gender identity. I think it's becoming more common now that we're pointing it out, but yeah, my gender identity is male. I'm female to male, and I use he, him, so I'm a man. But my sexual preference is queer, I guess, because like I like men, women, trans women. It really doesn't make a difference for me. Like, I think if I'm attracted to you and if you can intellectually stimulate me, then there's a possibility that we could be something more. So I just like the term queer because I feel like it really just takes everything into one instead of having to like list it all. Being out for me really is kind of like a double-edged sword, because like I told you before, I really draw inspiration from people telling me that they appreciate me being so open. And that's like important to me, like being a pillar or an example or an inspiration for people to feel like they can do it. And so that's really a big, huge positive part. Like just getting messages on Instagram or like old friends saying like, thank you so much for being the way that you were because it helped me, blah, blah, blah. So like, I love that, you know, and it's really important. But, you know, like there's the either getting the invasive questions, which has slowed down a lot, I'll be completely honest, so that's good. But one that really bothers me, and I still can't quite wrap my head around why this happens. People will meet me, they won't know I'm trans, they'll see me as a man, they won't even think anything. And then eventually I come out to them, and even though they never knew me as a woman, they didn't even know I was trans, they were using male pronouns and everything, after I tell them that I'm trans, it's happened on like multiple occasions, like 5 or more. They will she me, and I just don't get it. And for a long time, it really was hard for me, because I was like, what is it about me that's making you think I look like a woman? Because when I look at myself, I don't see a woman at all. Like, outing myself and having to deal with that can be super frustrating. But I think I'm at a point now where it doesn't like sit with me as much and like wear on me. Before it would like really wear on me, like, why am I not man enough or whatever. But I don't really feel that way anymore, but I would still like to understand why that happens. Not because it's anything about me per se, but like, why is it that they were saying he before and now that they know? It's very confusing. We've been programmed to believe a certain thing about society from birth, and it's not easy to reprogram. It takes years and years of self-awareness, understanding, learning other people's experiences, you know, contemplation. Like, it takes real work to let go of not only these ideas of binary and like racism and all the isms and everything like that. Like, you have to like be willing to understand that you have been programmed by society since birth to believe a certain way, but if you could just take control of your own mind, then you can reprogram, you can rid yourself of that. I grew up being angry at God, you know? But that was because I had this idea of the Christian God being this man with a beard and he doesn't like gays and blah, 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 blah. And trying to, for years and years after that, I was still seeking some sort of either religious affiliation or spiritual practice. I think we all are seeking a tribe or something, and I would find like, in the beginning, I started like looking into Buddhism or whatever. That was like the first one I had connected with deeply since Christianity. But still, I couldn't believe it because the Bible and Jesus was so deeply ingrained within me that I couldn't accept it as truth, even though I didn't believe that was truth either. So it was like, it took years of like studying and looking at it from different perspectives and like evaluating myself and my own thoughts about it and what other people's thoughts are and other religions and all these things. And now I can confidently say that I don't believe in the Christian God, you know? And I do take part in Buddhist spiritual practices, but I don't know if I would specifically acclaim to that either. I think I'm still on that journey of figuring that out too, so. This summer, I was in Tennessee photographing and dealing with the intersection of religion and gender and sexual identity, and I was doing an interview with a trans guy, and he went to church. At this point that I interviewed him, he wasn't attending anymore, and I don't know if he really would consider himself a Christian either, but he told me that the moment that he stopped going to church it was around the time when same-sex marriage was going to be legalized nationwide. And I guess he was in church at that time, and he said that somebody was speaking at the pulpit, but the pastor had interrupted him. I guess something must have happened at the news right at that moment. I'm not quite sure. But the pastor took to the pulpit and said, "We need to stand up and protest this to God right now, that same-sex marriage is wrong and we won't stand by it." And he knew he was trans. Like, he had like a full beard, like nobody in the church knew or anything like that, but like they were like literally protesting a part of his community. And he told me that everyone was standing up, so he stood up, because what would happen if he didn't stand up, you know? And so he realized that like the church, like, he was protesting himself by being in the church, you know, and thankfully that was enough for him to be like, okay, this clearly isn't right. They're literally invalidating my existence. Why am I still occupying this space? But it's like, that's the reality that people are dealing with. So it's just crazy to think about how when you're kind of raised in that environment, you let a lot of stuff go, or you say a lot of things or act a certain way because it is so ingrained in you that it literally takes a moment like that for you to realize that these people were never on your side anyways. From a lot of these people that I spoke with in Tennessee, a lot of them still practice Christianity, and I thought it was weird. So I was like, how, you know? But then they just told me like that their connection with God or the divine was so much deeper, and that they knew that God loved them, and that they stopped believing or listening to what Christians told them. And I thought that was really amazing, you know, because we can get the two confused so easily. You know, I feel like it's really hard to say the biggest issue, but the first thing that came to my mind is the fact that there are so many countries all over the world, but specifically in Africa, where you can be killed for being gay or being a part of the LGBTQ community. And we're so desensitized, we're so unaware of that here in America. Or we are aware, but we don't really think about it, you know? And as much as we have our struggles here in America, we are still extremely privileged. And for some reason that like is important to me, like going there, or I'm not sure exactly what, but doing something to bring more awareness to the fact that people are literally being executed, you know? We might, well, it can happen in the States too, so I don't want to say it like that, but by law, legally, these people can be executed just for being gay. Not just Africa, but all of these countries in which this is happening, and I think that's a problem that we should be spending more time advocating for. Well, we've got a lot of crazy stuff going on, but one thing that I've learned or that I feel is important is education. As annoying as it can be sometimes, I've found in my own personal experiences that when I've taken the time to educate somebody on my experience and to talk to them, knowing that they're probably going to say some ignorant stuff, they usually have a much better understanding of our experiences and seem to come around. And so I think we need to be working on that on a larger scale. And that's not to take the fault away from the bigots at all. And I also understand that it can be exhausting, because there are some times where I just want to go out and party and somebody find out that I'm trans and not ask me a million questions and me not have to explain everything. I get that completely. And so I think that's where we need to set boundaries for ourselves. But I think that education is huge, and I've just seen it time and time again change the way that people look at it. And I think education through something like this, like what we're doing right now, we're just like humanizing our experience. I'm just like a human talking about what I've gone through, you know. Even when I was in the military, I would talk to guys, or so many people, not just about me, but they would just feel like they could share it with me because I was gay. They'd be like, you know, I used to be homophobic, and then like I met a guy in my unit that was like a parachute rigger as well, which is like a really manly job, I guess, you know? And he's like, and then I realized you guys are just like me. And it's like so annoying that that's what it took for you to realize that, but at the same time, knowing somebody, knowing someone's story, having a personal association with somebody really does help open people up. Seeing the compassion in people, seeing people's desire to grow, seeing people really stepping into their power. And I think it takes a huge collective effort, but like by sharing our stories, by opening ourselves up and trying to help inspire other people, hopefully like if I can inspire one person to stop, to grow, to want to self-evaluate, and to evolve, you know, and to become a more compassionate being, then they're gonna do that to one more person, and it's gonna be a chain reaction. And it sounds like a utopian dream probably to people, but like, I just have like this inherent belief that we're capable of doing that. And I think that's just like what I hold on to. I'm really glad that me being out, and I think that's been a common theme in my life, is trying, even though I have my own inner turmoil, to be proud of who I am on the exterior. And over my life, a lot of people have like thanked me for that. So I really, you know, I really like that about myself, and I hold that tight, you know, so.